March 12, 2024. Tel Aviv, Florentine neighborhood. This arrival carried something else with it, a quiet but deliberate move, as if trying to ease the constant unease that defines the 21st century. March 12, 2024. Tel Aviv, Florentine neighborhood. This arrival carried something else with it, a quiet but deliberate move, as if trying to ease the constant unease that defines the 21st century. Joseph Levi stood before us after 5 long years. Hazel eyes, dark curly hair, and a laugh that instantly filled the room. The small apartment lit up the way a home does after reconciliation, not with shouting, but with a warmth that settles deep inside. No, it wasn't Hebrew. No, it wasn't any language we recognized. And yet, in the chaos of the modern world, it felt like something that didn't belong to us, as if it had passed through someone else's hands first. Our daughter Sarah, 34, was there too. She carried the weight of a harsh world on her shoulders. Her voice came through the camera loud and clear, but her gaze felt distant, almost invisible to the rest of the world. Still, somehow, we were breathing together with so many others. Those 2 voices were proof of another era, another time. Tselem, Elohim, Biset, Marom. The words flowed back into the room with ritual-like rhythm, like an ancient prayer echoing again. Not just words, a call, reaching from somewhere old and forgotten. David Levi, 37, a software developer, tried to intervene. He spoke calmly, trying to ground us, but Joseph was already far beyond that space. His eyes were open, yet they saw nothing. His mouth moved, but the voice wasn't his. For a full 20 minutes, we barely moved. The cadence paused line by line. The intonation sent chills down our spine. It felt as if an invisible text hovered in the air, and all we could do was sit back and witness it. Then came repentance, regret. Joseph looked at his father's face, twisted with confusion. "Mom, where is my fast?" he asked. And then nothing, as if the last 20 minutes were never meant to stay in our memory. Sarah and David left the room in silence. Fear was written all over their faces, but they chose not to panic. After all, we had seen a lot of strange things on live broadcasts before. Maybe this was just another one of them. But by the time Joseph calmed himself with the construction blocks on the floor, it was already too late. Meanwhile, David began preparing to record everything just in case. From a logical standpoint, recording the video felt safe. Joseph, however, was in complete flow. No stuttering, no searching for words. His speech moved effortlessly, as natural as a mother tongue, as fluid as an ancient manuscript. What was happening couldn't be mapped to anything learned over 5 years in the air, yet it was symbolized with extreme precision. Sarah, drawing on her background in pedagogy, pointed out the most critical detail. The movements were incredibly precise, too ritualistic, too rehearsed. This wasn't a child's imagination at work. It was muscle memory, and everything could be recorded in a way that left your conscience completely clear. The following night, still unable to calm himself, David shared the video in a private Facebook group dedicated to ancient languages. He did it without much hope, just a quiet request for guidance. "If this needs a prescription, take your time," he wrote. The response took more than 3 hours. The message came from Dr. Ellie Rothman. Her profile picture showed a white-haired, expressionless academic. Her words felt heavy. "This is impossible. This is not an imperial language. It's a highly specific dialect from the X century BCE, pre-Christ. And these are not isolated phrases. Fragments of a structured text are being recited. There is no broader archive of this in the academic world. I've worked for 40 years, and this language exists only in 3 maximum security manuscript repositories. The message continued. For God's sake, we need to come to Jerusalem immediately. Nothing else matters right now. If this is real, if this is a live recording, the implications go far beyond speculation. I can't find a rational explanation at this point. Sarah read the message 3 times. Her hands were shaking. David looked into Dr. Rothman's background. Everything checked out. A retired linguist from the University of Jerusalem, a specialist in ancient Semitic languages, author of multiple academic reference volumes, a name recognized worldwide. That night, no one slept in the bedroom. What happened to you? 3 days later, the Levi family was in Jerusalem. Dr. Rothman's office at the Hebrew University felt like a private museum. Manuscripts from Paris, excavation photos from Mesopotamia and Egypt, technical texts filled with the languages of vanished civilizations. The 68-year-old doctor observed Joseph with absolute focus. There was calm in her face, the calm of someone standing at the top of a mountain, mixed with undeniable fascination. And Joseph was about to speak again.
"Hello, Joseph," Dr. Rothman said softly, speaking Hebrew with a calm, controlled tone. "Do you know why you're here?" She placed a tablet on the table. It was a copy of an ancient Aramaic fragment. A translation about sin was visible, but the meaning went far beyond the words themselves. "Would you like to try?" she asked. "To reconcile, to make peace?" Joseph stared at the tablet for exactly 5 seconds. Then he spoke. The language was modern Hebrew, but what he was doing wasn't ordinary translation. He rendered a text from the First Temple period, nearly 3,000 years old, with astonishing precision. Dr. Rothman forgot how to breathe. It felt as if the air had left everyone's lungs at once. Sarah grabbed David's hand and didn't let go. She held it so tightly it almost hurt. For 5 years, their understanding of this era came only from illustrated Bible stories. And now, right in front of them, a text from an undeveloped linguistic stage was being translated flawlessly. "May I run more tests?" the doctor asked, her voice trembling. I need to be sure." The parents nodded silently. Over the next hours, Joseph was presented with fragments from different ancient texts: Aramaic, Akkadian, Proto-Hebrew, materials preserved through academic collaborations, private research, and public archives. But the child didn't just read them. He understood them. He explained their historical context, and worse than that, he corrected mistakes. When Rothman showed him a fragment mistranslated by a 20th century academic team, Joseph immediately responded. "Here it says Melech, king, but it should be Malak, angel. In the copy, the letters are nearly identical." Dr. Rothman collapsed back into her chair. Her legs could no longer support her. Then she retrieved a document few people on Earth had ever seen, a portion of the Book of Enoch, an intermediate version, practically a working draft. She placed it in front of Joseph. The child needed only a glance. "Did you regret it?" he said. That was the meaning of the line. But as he spoke, Joseph seemed far away, no longer fully present. "This isn't a forbidden book," Dr. Rothman said, her voice carrying both awe and fear. "The book isn't what's forbidden. It's what guards the altar, the door that must never be opened. And
the existence of doors is forbidden." Silence took over the office completely. Sarah looked at David. David turned to the doctor. The doctor stared at Joseph, eyes wide open. "Which book are you talking about, son?" Dr. Rothman asked. Her voice barely carried. Joseph answered calmly, as if stating an everyday fact. "The Sefer HaKotmat, the Book of the Seals. King Solomon wrote it before the gates were closed. He hid it so that only the chosen one could find it.
It's waiting. Beneath the stone. Beneath the temple. Dr. Rothman began recording voice notes rapidly. Then she stepped aside for a brief, hushed conversation with the parents. When she returned, her explanation was calmer, but far more disturbing. Sefer HaKotmat isn't just a text, it's an entire world, an extremely ancient and internally consistent tradition. There are theories that King Solomon wrote a secret work for his inner circle, a text meant to summon and influence divine entities. The book contains vast knowledge, including what appears to be a foundational historical narrative. She paused, swallowed. What troubles me most, she continued, is the level of detail, a precision we haven't even considered in 5 years. And even more unsettling, was this moment chosen intentionally? The phrase, "a child reading ancient Aramaic," spread rapidly through Jerusalem's academic circles. Aware that the situation could escalate quickly, Dr. Rothman made a decisive move. She contacted the Hebrew University's Institute of Archaeology and requested an emergency academic assembly. March 22, 2024. The conference hall was open to the public, guarded with security measures worthy of a government summit. Present were Dr. Michael Stern, Director of Solomon's Temple Studies, Rabbi Yitzhak Cohen, expert in Kabbalistic texts and legal traditions, Dr. Ayelet Ben David, pediatric neurologist specializing in extraordinary memory, and representatives of the Israel Antiquities Authority. Yes, Joseph was there, along with his father. A brief assessment protocol was conducted, fully documented on video. Photographic copies of inscriptions discovered during Temple Mount excavations were placed on the table. Some had appeared in academic publications. Many others remained restricted, sealed away due to political and religious sensitivity. All of this aligned with information already known to the public. Joseph wasn't merely translating the texts, he was merging with them. He explained their historical context, identified their approximate period of origin, corrected flawed translations, and reconstructed missing meaning. When he was presented with an ancient fragment, one not linguistically related to Aramaic, Joseph translated it effortlessly and connected multiple sources at once. This is the language of the builders of the first temple. Hiram of Tyre had it inscribed on the bronze pillars reinforcing the harbor. Phoenicia was assigned to oversee the construction, study the funding methods, and the reinforced metals. Dr. Stern confirmed that the child's abilities were now undeniable. Joseph's interpretations matched historical sources that had not yet been fully analyzed. The floor was then given to Dr. Ayelet Ben David. Over the next 3 hours, Joseph underwent extensive neurological testing, MRI scans, electroencephalographies, memory evaluations, attention and concentration tests, full cognitive assessments. The results were finalized by the end of the day. Everything was completely normal. Joseph was a healthy child. No structural abnormalities in the brain, no unusual neural signaling, no signs of any known information processing syndrome. His IQ measured at 118, above average, but not in a range that could explain what had been observed. Dr. Ben David concluded her report with one of the most difficult sentences of her career. This case involves access to a level of information that cannot be accounted for by conventional medical tools. There is no neurological or psychological explanation for the observed phenomenon. An urgent interdisciplinary investigation is strongly recommended. Rabbi Cohen, who had remained silent throughout the session, asked for permission to speak with Joseph privately. They moved to a small, quiet room. The rabbi spoke softly in Hebrew. "Joseph, who taught you these things? Where did you learn these languages?" The child looked at him with hazel eyes that seemed far too ancient for such a young face. "The king shows me in my dreams." "Which king, my son?" "King Solomon," Joseph said. "He comes every night. He shows me the rhythm. He teaches me the words. He says the seals are weakening, that someone has to find the book before others do, because a lot of people are already looking for it, people who want the doors." Rabbi Cohen felt the air in the room turn heavy, thick, dense, like something invisible had slipped in and filled the space. "Which doors, Joseph?" The child grabbed a pencil and a sheet of paper and started drawing, fast, confident, like he'd done it 1,000 times. Geometric symbols appeared immediately, hexagons connected to hexagons, inverted triangles, tight lines with perfect symmetry. For a small child, the precision was almost unreal. Rabbi Cohen recognized the symbols instantly. These weren't similar marks, they were identical, exact matches to talismans dated to the 8th century BCE, amulets attributed to Solomon, said to preserve summoning power and restrain spiritual entities, the kind of artifacts even a rabbi like Cohen would only ever see in highly specialized academic vaults. "Where did you see these symbols, Joseph?" "In the library, on top of the altar," Joseph replied. "That's where my hands were the most, before all of this happened, before the first generation." When Rabbi Cohen returned to the main room, his face had gone pale. The group reconvened, and the shift in the atmosphere was obvious. Something had changed direction. Dr. Stern looked shaken. "These symbols," she whispered, "they're documented in only 3 manuscripts worldwide. I dedicated years of research to this, and I still... How?" No one had a clean answer. On March 28, 2024, an extraordinary meeting was called. A multidisciplinary panel faced one central question. Were they really going to follow the trail of stronger Solomon visions spoken through the mouth of a 5-year-old? From a scientific standpoint, it sounded absurd, but the evidence was too solid to dismiss. Joseph was accessing knowledge that couldn't realistically be learned through ordinary means, and the team had nothing, no neurological, psychological, or logical model that could fully explain it. Dr. Stern placed the final proposal on the table. Take Joseph to the Temple Mount, specifically to the underground tunnels near the Western Wall. The area was among the most sensitive in all of Israel, with security tightened more and more by the day. The area was heavily restricted, constantly monitored by both religious and military authorities. Politically, historically, and spiritually, every movement was measured down to the centimeter. If the child truly knows where something is hidden, the doctor argued, we'll know immediately, and if he doesn't, then at least we'll have ruled out the possibility. After intense debates, negotiations with religious authorities, and multiple closed-door meetings, the visit was approved under 3 strict conditions: absolute secrecy, continuous supervision by religious representatives, and 0 physical intervention without explicit rabbinical authorization. The date was set, April 3rd. On the morning of April 3rd, Joseph and his parents were escorted into the underground passages of the ancient Temple of Solomon, accompanied by a full scientific team, armed security, and a representative of the Israeli chief rabbinate. The air felt different, heavier, thicker, as if history itself was breathing selectively. Operational LED lights, installed over many years, illuminated the tunnels. Stone blocks that had guarded secrets for 3,000 years bore cracks shaped by rising and falling empires. Some cavities had once been filled with scrolls. Joseph walked quietly, holding his mother's hand, but this wasn't the walk of a frightened child. He was focused, determined, as if an invisible map hovered before him. At a depth of nearly 40 meters, within a tunnel section layered with markings and inscriptions from countless eras, Joseph suddenly stopped. He let go of Sarah's hand, walked directly to a specific section of the wall.
placed his small hand on a single stone, indistinguishable from the others, then spoke with certainty. Here, the camera was here, the library too, like it was in September. Dr. Amos Golan, the team's archaeologist, looked at Dr. Stern. They were thinking the same thing. This was impossible. This section had been examined repeatedly. Religious restrictions and the fragility of the structure had prevented deeper excavation. "Joseph," Dr. Golan asked carefully, "how do you know there's something there?"
"The king showed me," Joseph said. After the book was taken, he pointed to the camera the most. "This stone was marked on purpose. In the back section, there's a sign, one you can only see from the inside." A device slightly larger than a phone, black, tablet-like, was brought out, a next-generation portable ground-penetrating radar used to scan damaged stone structures. The device was positioned exactly where Joseph had indicated, against the wall. The data began processing instantly. On the screen, density layers appeared: stone, more stone, even more stone. Then, an empty space, a cavity. Behind the wall, a chamber roughly 2 by 3 meters in size. Dr. Golan zoomed in, adjusted the radar configuration, ran multiple passes. The results were consistent. At the center of the chamber, the material density spiked sharply. The shape was unmistakable, no room for doubt. It looked like a box, a chest, stone, or perhaps extremely dense wood. "My God," Dr. Stern whispered, "this is real. There really is something there." Security personnel stiffened instantly. The chief rabbinate's representative began making urgent phone calls. Sarah Levi clenched her jaw, fighting back absolute terror. Her eyes never left Joseph. Joseph, calm beyond his years, spoke again. "We have to take it out before they find it." "Who are they, son?" David asked. Joseph stared into the shadows of the tunnel, as if seeing something no one else could. "Those who want to open the doors." The statement triggered an immediate crisis. Opening any section of the temple wall required extraordinary authorization. The stones in question dated back to the First Temple period, untouched for 3,000 years. For Jews, the temple wall is the holiest site in Judaism, the last remnant of Solomon's temple. For Muslims, the Temple Mount, Haram al-Sharif, houses Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of Islam's most sacred places. Any intervention here risked igniting an international religious conflict. But the evidence was undeniable. Something was hidden there, and the measurements were precise down to the millimeter. If we had possessed a database this precise and reliable for more than 5 years, perhaps none of this would have escalated to this point. As the days passed, discussions intensified and converged into a single forum. Jewish and Muslim religious leaders, Israeli governmental authorities, representatives from UNESCO. Everyone was debating the same issue. Rabbi Cohen presented a critical argument. We are facing the possibility of a new tradition, sources of knowledge deliberately concealed by Solomon to be revealed only at specific times. The Talmud speaks of secrets hidden in purity and invisibility, meant to surface when the moment arrives. This is not something to dismiss lightly. If this knowledge is truly being transmitted through a divine channel, intervening without understanding could have serious consequences. Muslim representatives took the opposite stance. To them, this situation risked becoming a justification for excavations that would compromise the integrity of the Temple Mount. Yet, despite all objections, progress seemed unavoidable. Sheikh Hassan Alami, one of the Muslim custodians of the Temple Mount, agreed to meet with Joseph. The meeting was held in a neutral space, with representatives from multiple religious communities present. Sheikh Alami, a scholar of more than 60 years, calm and deeply reflective, sat beside Joseph. For several minutes he observed him in silence. Then he asked in Arabic, "Why do you seek what has been hidden, child?" Joseph answered in Hebrew, without hesitation. His words were translated immediately. "I'm not searching for this for you. My hand was guided elsewhere. There are doors that do not belong to Jews or Muslims. Everything needs to be kept in balance. If this is not protected now, people with bad intentions will use it to cause harm." The sheikh closed his eyes and quietly murmured verses from the Quran. Then he spoke, composed but firm. Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, is honored deeply in every tradition. If this is true, if this knowledge truly comes from him, then people can be convinced, but not through force or haste. It must proceed through minimal intervention, repeated oversight, and careful monitoring by representatives of all communities. In the end, following intense diplomatic and religious negotiations, the following framework was approved: a minimally invasive exploration, endoscopic cameras inserted through a hole no larger than 3 centimeters, continuous religious oversight throughout the procedure, every step fully documented on video. If findings proved significant, further actions would be determined by an international committee. The date was set: April 24th, 2024. On April 24th, the tunnels beneath the Temple Mounts became a convergence point of technology and human focus. Specialized micro-drilling equipment designed for delicate archaeological sites was deployed. State-of-the-art 4K endoscopic cameras, motion sensors, multiple monitoring screens connected to a centralized control panel. Present were Dr. Rothman, Dr. Stern, Dr. Golan, Rabbi Cohen, Sheikh Alami, representatives of the Antiquities Authority, technical specialists, and armed security. And Joseph, with his parents. The child had insisted on being present. His explanation was simple. "The king says I must be there when it opens." The drilling apparatus was calibrated precisely where Joseph had pointed. The drill bit was extremely thin, designed to minimize structural damage. The sound echoed through the tunnels, like a ship's hull being pierced. Millimeter by millimeter, it penetrated stone that had stood untouched for thousands of years. The process took 40 minutes. Once the bit broke through, the drill was carefully withdrawn. The endoscopic camera was prepared, a coin-sized lens attached to a flexible cable. Camera inserting. Everyone stared at the monitors. At first, the screen was completely dark. Then the LED lights beside the camera switched on automatically. The air inside was dense. Dust particles, undisturbed for millennia, floated into view. The camera advanced, focused, adjusted, and then, "My God," Dr. Golan whispered. A small chamber appeared on screen, roughly 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters. The walls were covered, completely covered, in inscriptions. Characters Dr. Rothman identified as Proto-Hebrew, dating back to the 10th century BCE. The camera moved in. Then it stopped. More inscriptions appeared, complete texts, paragraphs carved in calligraphy so perfectly preserved it felt unreal. Yet everyone's breath was fixed on what stood at the center of the chamber. A stone base was lifted. The surface beneath it was scanned. No, this was far more significant. Roughly the size of a small chest, made of acacia wood, the same acacia mentioned in the sacred texts, covered in bronze plates, now partially oxidized, turning sections of the metal a deep, almost mesmerizing green. The camera zoomed in. Symbols engraved into the bronze became visible. Exactly, no variation at all, the very same symbols Joseph had described. geometric forms arranged in hexagonal patterns, inscriptions embedded within them, all bound together as a single system, a single seal. "It's stable," Dr. Golan said out loud, barely steadying his voice. "The structure is completely intact, designed to withstand temperature shifts. The preservation, it's impossible. The humidity inside this chamber created a perfect protective environment." Dr. Stern began photographing the wall inscriptions almost obsessively. When the high-resolution images were relayed to Dr. Rothman, the ancient language expert went pale. The translation revealed this. This is a sealing declaration. It reads, "What is stored here is not a treasure of gold or silver, but condensed knowledge granted by divine order. It concerns the doors that were closed for protection. This knowledge does not open where it is found, but within the one deemed worthy to understand it." Silence overtook the room. Joseph, who had been calmly escorted back to his mother during the procedure, suddenly stood up. He walked toward the massive screen displaying the image of the ancient chest. He pointed at one of the symbols. "This is part of the protection," he said. "It opens by turning it 3 times toward the sun, while silently pronouncing the name of God, the 72-letter name, known only to the high priests of the temple." Rabbi Cohen collapsed where he stood. This was no longer just an academic discovery. This was something else entirely. The hidden name of God, the Shem HaMeforash, is one of the most sacred and mysterious concepts in Judaism. It consists of 72 letter combinations that form the divine name. Only the high priest was permitted to pronounce it once a year inside the Holy of Holies of the temple. That practice ended with the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. For nearly 2,000 years, the name has remained unspoken. And no, this has nothing to do with the 5 years I mentioned earlier. "How do you know this, Joseph?" the rabbi asked, his voice barely audible. "The king taught me," Joseph replied. "He showed me in my dreams. The letters were glowing in the air. He told me that when the time came, I would know how to open it. But he also told me something else." "What else, my son?" Joseph looked directly at the rabbi. In that moment, it felt like everything happening in the room needed to pause at once. "If I try to open more than I should," he said, "and if the sea isn't pure, what's inside disappears. It turns to dust within days. That path isn't always meant for me. That's why I have to be careful." As the implications settled in, the debate grew heated. Some scientists insisted the situation must be handled strictly through modern archaeological methodology. No superstition, no prophecy, just rigorous science. Others, particularly religious representatives, warned against ignoring the explicit warnings written in the texts. They argued this could amount to a serious and irreversible act of disrespect. "But what if it's true?" Rabbi Cohen interjected. "What if there really is something that cannot be touched without consequence? These traditions didn't emerge randomly. Ancient people weren't fools. Some things are kept hidden precisely because they are not meant to be handled freely." Dr. Galan responded, frustration clear in his tone. "We're talking about science, not magic. There's a physical chamber and a physical container. We can document it, analyze it, and proceed with all necessary precautions, not with rituals or child-centered interpretations." At that point, Dr. Stern stepped in and proposed a compromise. "But what if it works?" Dr. Stern asked. Scientific methodology doesn't forbid allowing Joseph to act under strict supervision. If something happens, we gain new understanding. If nothing happens, we close the hypothesis. The mystical side ends there. In the end, after consultations with state authorities, religious leaders, and international experts, a precedent-setting decision was made. Joseph Levi would take part directly for the first time in 5 years. Under full scientific supervision, with limited and controlled religious oversight, all archaeological safety protocols fully enforced. If the child was unable to initiate the process, or if it failed, conventional scientific equipment would immediately take over. The date was set, May 12, 2024. Preparations were exhaustive. Purification rituals overseen by clerics from 3 different branches of Judaism, specially designed security protocols, state-of-the-art scientific documentation cameras, presence of representatives from international academic institutions, emergency medications and response equipment, and environmental and air analysis conducted before any human entry. In the final days before May 12th, Joseph changed noticeably. At night, he seemed lost in a world filled with symbols, whispering in Aramaic. While staying in Jerusalem, Sarah and David heard him repeat sentences they couldn't understand. Dr. Rothman visited daily, documenting everything, reviewing procedures. What unfolded became a record of the psychological weight placed on a child far too young for it. Then, suddenly, Joseph became agitated. Sarah immediately took him aside, moving him away from the others into a quieter room. "Mom," Joseph said, his voice shaking with fear. "I went back. I ran while the doors were open. I saw what's happening in the most beautiful place in the world. I saw people disappearing. I saw the sky tearing apart. We have to seal the doors, Mom, before they come." "Who are they, sweetheart?" Sarah asked softly. "The ones who are always there," Joseph replied. "The ones who can see what's happening elsewhere. Every generation has them, people willing to pay the price for their own punishment." Sarah took a slow breath, forcing herself to stay steady. This was no longer a burden for a scientist or an assistant to carry, but she had to protect her son. The morning in Jerusalem broke with an unusual clarity. The sky was completely clear, not a single cloud, as if the world itself was breathing more deeply than usual. 40 meters beneath the Temple Mount, the tension inside the tunnels was thick enough to feel. In recent weeks, a side passage had been excavated to avoid disturbing the main structure. This passage allowed direct but controlled access to the chamber behind the wall. Only a reduced team of 12 was authorized to enter. Joseph and his parents, Dr. Rothman, Dr. Stern, Dr. Golan, Rabbi Cohen, Sheikh Alami, representing the Muslim community, specialized security archivists, and 3 documentation technicians. Joseph was dressed entirely in white, in accordance with the purification protocol. Over the past 24 hours, under Rabbi Cohen's supervision, he had remained in silence and prayer. The child was remarkably calm, as if this state was the most natural thing in the world for him. When the access point to the chamber was finally opened, the air that emerged carried an indescribable hue. Not darkness, not light, ancient, and somehow alive. A mixture of millennia-old stone, wood, and metal filled the space. Something indefinable lingered there. Joseph entered first. Cameras captured every second. This wasn't just documentation, it was history being recorded in real time. Dr. Golan and Rabbi Cohen followed, then Sheikh Alami. From the control area, teams monitored their movement through video panels. The space, previously seen only through endoscopic footage, felt entirely different in person. Larger than expected, the air vibrated with a subtle, unfamiliar energy. The inscriptions on the walls carried a weight no book could convey. The lines of the protocol texts were preserved with flawless precision. Watching the live feed, Dr. Rothman whispered fragments of translation. Within the boundaries, between what is and what must be, 7 signs for 7 fractures. When completed, the chosen will remember. Joseph moved forward slowly. No fear, no hesitation. He placed his small hands at the exact center of the seal. The oxidized bronze felt cold and heavy beneath his palms. Cold spread through the chamber. Then came a murmur, not modern, not Aramaic, something far older, much deeper. The sound vibrated at a frequency beyond ordinary hearing, felt more through bone than ear. Rabbi Cohen tried to recognize fragments of it, a literary language found only in extremely rare manuscripts, but meaning didn't sit on the surface, it hid between the sounds. Joseph whispered for exactly 3 minutes. Then he began to move, not like a child, but like part of a ritual, slowly, backward, against the direction of the path he had taken. One full rotation. A metallic sound echoed through the camera feed, ancient, like seals that had been frozen in place for 3 millennia, finally stirring. Second rotation. The inscriptions on the walls began to glow. Not imagination, the cameras captured it clearly. A faint but elegant response formed from tall, elongated characters. "What the hell?" Dr. Golan whispered. Third rotation. A final click. The side locks of the chest released simultaneously. Bronze fastenings preserved for 3,000 years loosened at once, as if the metal itself exhaled. Reactions surged through the room, then faded into silence. Joseph stepped away from the center and looked at Dr. Golan. "You can open it now," he said, calmly. Special archaeological tools designed specifically for handling sacred antiquities were brought forward. Hands gripped the edges of the bronze lid. It was lifted, millimeter by millimeter. The resistance gradually eased. Everyone held their breath. Inside lay a perfectly preserved base lined with a dark material. 12 objects in total, tablet-like plates roughly the size of a modern iPad, covered in wedge-shaped markings intertwined with Proto-Hebrew characters. The text density was minimal, as if an immense amount of information had been compressed into barely a centimeter. But that wasn't all. Beside the tablets, in a separate compartment, lay an object that made Rabbi Cohen's knees buckle, a disc of pure gold, about the size of a small platter, set with precious fragments arranged into a complete geometric pattern. It wasn't a regular hexagon. It was a heptagon. It reminded David of a star, but with one extra point. The surface was covered with stones instantly recognizable: lapis lazuli, carnelian, emerald, jasper, agate, and others. 7 stones, each a different color, each meaningless on its own, yet fully connected together. Joseph carefully picked up the object. The LED lights illuminating the camera were switched off. What remained had a purity no modern object could replicate. Crafted using ancient techniques, it felt deliberately resistant to contemporary design. "This is the 7th seal," Joseph said, with a maturity far beyond his age. "The others are hidden across different parts of the world. They were separated so they couldn't be easily reassembled. These tablets were written for those who would recognize them." He paused. His eyes drifted into the distance. "This," he continued, "tests whether intentions have been examined honestly. There isn't much time left to complete what began 3,000 years ago." "How much time is left, my son?" Rabbi Cohen asked, his voice trembling. For a moment, Joseph's expression softened into something more childlike. "The same year," he said. "The seals were created exactly 2,950 years ago. They began weakening centuries later, and he said there would be another day when it would find its way back here." The following 3 months became the most intense period of Dr. Rothman's career. The tablets from the Library of Seals were transferred to a specially prepared laboratory at the Hebrew University. Security rivaled that of a central bank. Workdays stretched to 16 hours. Photography, scanning, translation. Joseph remained central to the process. Whenever scholars encountered an unclear passage, a damaged character, or a word eroded by time, there was no hesitation, no stalling, no guesswork. It was as if he had direct access to an invisible archive. Dr. Rothman documented the phenomenon with careful precision. These tablets were not discovered, they were recovered. The text emerges in a complete and coherent form that defies conventional explanation. Even when sections are physically erased, the meaning reconstructs itself without error.
"We can read it," Dr. Rothman said. "We compared it against fragments copied across different tablets. The precision is confirmed. Accuracy is 100%. But the contents of the Library of Seals were unsettling. The texts were disturbing. According to the tablets, King Solomon was not a lone sage. At the center of the work stood a master of a doctrine called Hokmati HaGevalim, the wisdom of boundaries. The timeline was precise. 957 BCE, during the construction of the temple, excavations beneath Mount Moriah uncovered objects that should not have existed. There were fractures in reality itself. The rock showed no physical damage, yet fissures opened in open space, places where, on an ordinary day, the barrier between eras thinned. For the workers, it was unbearable. Some lost their sanity, others vanished entirely. Solomon halted construction. He consulted ancient texts, knowledge passed down from times before the flood, teachings said to rebuild civilizations. He realized the pain had always been there, beneath Mount Moriah. That was why memory mattered. This was where Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac, where Jacob's vision climbed toward the heavens. It was a junction point, a threshold where multiple things could occur at once. And something on the other side was trying to cross. The tablets did not give these entities a single name. They used many, the Watchers, the ones before, the others not named. But the text was clear. These were not demonic beings in the traditional sense. They were different, structures existing in parallel dimensions. Contact with the human world had caused catastrophic consequences. Solomon used ancient knowledge to create the seals. Physical objects reinforced with geometrically stable tablets, special mathematical patterns designed to operate across dimensions. For the first time, deliberately and skillfully, he sealed the primary rupture within the Holy of Holies of the temple. The others were hidden across the world, in distant places where minor fractures still existed. There are places where the barriers weaken over time. They are never left unguarded. Each is entrusted to specific protectors, families, bloodlines, secrets passed down through generations. Understanding what these objects truly do is only possible when all these elements come together. The tablets provide precise locations for each seal. First seal, the ruins of Babylon in what is now Iraq, guarded by descendants of the Chaldeans. Second seal, in the Sinai Desert, referred to in the text as the true mountain, most likely Mount Sinai itself, protected by a specific tribe. Third seal, beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza, inside a hidden chamber modern archaeologists have yet to explain, guarded by descendants of Ra's sacred order. Fourth seal, in the Caucasus Mountains, within modern Georgia or Armenia, protected by a Christian order since antiquity. Fifth seal, among the ruins of Persepolis, the ancient Persian capital in present-day Iran, guarded by descendants of Zoroastrian priests. Sixth seal, described in the tablets as an island beneath the sun, a layer rising from water and smoke. Scholars debate whether this points to Japan, New Zealand, or a Pacific island. As the text is unclear, it is believed to be guarded locally. Seventh seal, the master seal, beneath the temple in Jerusalem. What you encountered was this:
The seals were designed to endure for 3,000 years. After that, weakening begins. All tablets converge on one critical detail. The inscriptions date back approximately 2,950 years. That places them exactly 50 years before the decline began. The final tablet contains detailed instructions on how to renew the seals, but there is one absolute condition. They must be reunited by those of pure intent. One has already died at Mount Moriah. A specific ritual performed every day and every night is required to reactivate the system. If this is not completed by the year 2074, catastrophes will follow. And you were somewhere else. You stepped inside.